Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Scott Luton and Marty Parker with you here on Supply Chain, and welcome to today's live stream. Marty, how are you doing today?
Fantastic, Scott. Got beautiful weather here in Marietta, and just thrilled to be here with you.
I'm with you. We've had gorgeous weather the last couple of days. We got a little break from the 90 plus degree temps, and this morning, getting in the car to get ready to take the kids to school, I think it was like 60, maybe 59. Oh, it is a sign of beautiful things to come, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't always have that in Atlanta, so when we have it, we got to really enjoy it.
That's right. Got to lead into the moment. But folks, welcome here today. It is The Buzz, where every Monday at 12 noon Eastern Time, we discuss a variety of news and developments across global supply chain and the global business world. Now, Marty, we got some really cool stuff to get into here today. Let's see, starting with the growing supply chain challenges and costs associated with next day and 2-day delivery. We're going to share a few manufacturing and economic signals with our standard disclaimer that Marty and I are not economists, folks. Let's see. We're also going to touch on how some firms have been winning the supply chain talent war and what you should do. All of that, a whole bunch more. Special guest also is joining us about 12:15 p.m. Eastern Time, about 12 minutes from now. Kristi Porter with Vector Global Logistics. So buckle up, folks, and get ready. Marty, should be a great show, huh?
Absolutely excited about it. Love what they're doing and can't wait to talk about it.
Me too. Me too. I've been a long time admirer of Kristi and Enrique and everybody over there at Vector. Two things, folks, before we get started here today. First off, give us your take in the comments, whether you're tuned in via LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Facebook, Twitch, no matter, just like Amanda did. Let us know what you think. She says, happy Buzz Day. Say hello and where you're watching from. We welcome that as well. Big thanks to her and Catherine for driving production behind the scenes. Secondly, if you enjoy the show today, hey, we'd love for you to share it with a friend and your network. They'll be glad you did. Okay, so Marty, you ready to get to work?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm going to start with some resources as always. Over the weekend, we dropped the 90, let's see here. I think it's the 92nd edition of With That Said. Now, Marty, those episode numbers, whether you're talking podcasts or newsletter edition numbers, if you're talking stuff like this, no one cares about it except the ones that created Marty, I think. But a lot of work, a lot of TLC went into this. So y'all check out this newsletter. Now, if you're familiar with that said, we drop it on LinkedIn, typically over the weekend, and then it hits our opt-in email subscriber database later in the week. Marty, let's see here. We got into the Canada rail industry disruption. One of the things we touched on. Now, by the way, over the weekend, the Canadian government ordered Canadian National Railway and Canadian Pacific Kansas City to resume normal operations here today. Now, there may be a legal challenge very soon to that order, but it means at least for the minute, no labor strike or lockout right this minute. We touched on that. We touched on the do-it-yourself industry challenges. A lot of folks are postponing purchases. We touched on these potential interest rate cuts, at least here in the States, and the new kids on the block when it comes to innovative voices in supply chain. All that, links to our live programming, tools, resources, you name it. Marty, what was one thing that you spied in our With That Said over the weekend that you enjoyed?
So there was an amazing video from Vector Global Logistics that really teared me up. And my students at UGA just really need to know that their work matters, that it's relevant. And just every clip in that video talks and shows the difference that we all make that work in supply chain. So I just love that.
Marty, well said. And I love that video as well. And as you kind of put it there, far more eloquent than I did. You want to know that your work matters, right? And you're making a difference in this world. And that's in global supply chain is a unique position to do that. So well said there, Marty. So y'all check it out, folks. We also had a little play on a much lighter note, August and everything after. Anyone know where that reference comes from? I'll give you a hint, music. In 1990s. We'll see if someone comes up with where we got August and everything after. Hey, Marty, did you have a bunch of CDs back in the day like this graphic here has laid out?
Of course. Didn't we all?
But I'll point out two quick things. And since I can cheat, I know where this graphic came from. Of course, it was AI generated. But look at what AI might be missing context. That boombox has no CD player. And look at the couch. Look how big those CDs. Is that like a quadruple collection? Look how big those things are.
These might be
Anyway.
laser discs.
Must be. But check out with that said, folks, and be sure we're going to make it really easy for you. We got the link right there in the chat. And hey, when you do, check out the news, the tools, resources, the events. Also, check out that video that Marty called out and let us know your take on that. Let's see. T Squared is with us. Good Monday. They say keep bringing on the supply chain management nourishment, hopefully with reverse logistics as an appetizer. More coming in that field. And as always, T Squared, great to have you here from the Baltimore area. And Nuria from Spain. Nuria, great to see you here today. Great friend of the show via LinkedIn. All right, so let's see here. Where are we going next, Marty? Oh, resources. That's right. We've got to make sure we touch on this resource here. We invite you to check out the recently released U.S. Bank Freight Payment Index for second quarter 2024. It's full, as it always is, of freight, supply chain, even some economic observations, because as y'all know, it's all woven together, right? So everything's connected. And all of this report is driven by tons and tons of data by the container load. It's a great resource to help folks, all of us, understand what's going on in the domestic freight market, especially when you combine that with all the other great reporting and data that's out there, so we can get a sense of what's going on. Marty, it never hurts to acquire some new, especially good data, not just tidal waves of nuggets, but good data. Marty, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we need it from every source we can to make good decisions. And, sometimes they're even contradictory, but we've got to look at all of them as we're making decisions about what we're going to do with our businesses.
Marty, well said. And you know what? I love the contradictions, because somewhere in those contradictions is the truth, right? And we've got to be able to, it reminds me of organizations past and present. Everybody's got their own spreadsheet. A lot of times that those things didn't agree, right? But nevertheless, folks, check out the resource. We dropped a link there for the U.S. Bank Freight Payment Index, and lean into the contradictions in your data. It's truth there waiting to be revealed. Hey, Awab via LinkedIn. I hope I said that right. If I didn't, let me know, please. Watching us from Egypt. Hey, welcome. And we look forward to your perspective on these stories as we walk through it. Okay, so Marty Parker, we have shared some resources, and now we're going to get to our first story here today, which I thought this was a really intriguing piece. Let me pull up this graphic here. So we're talking about this article from our friends at CNBC that touches on a key component of the Amazon effect, right? We've all heard that phrase a million times, right? One of the biggest impacts that Amazon has had on industry is to change consumers' expectations, especially when it comes to, those delivery timeframes. Same day, 1 day, and at the latest 2-day delivery has essentially become standard. But maintaining those standards have continued to become more challenging and costly from a variety of perspectives. Let's see here. Walmart, Target, other retailers have leaned in on technology in particular in a number of different ways, including efforts focused on predicting demand, disruption, weather, you name it. Now, speaking of weather, Marty, get this. FreightWaves data shows that weather-related supply chain disruptions will cost the logistics industry some $100 billion in 2024. Many in industry point to extreme weather as one of the greatest transportation challenges in the market today, and not just hurricanes and tornadoes, but problems like the drought conditions impacting the Panama Canal. Walmart leadership specifically talks about the critical role that predictive modeling plays, right? So they can get out ahead of disruption, be it weather-related or otherwise. The opportunities we have to conduct scenarios and modeling and scenario planning by the hundreds, if not thousands, is immense. And all this heat, like Marty and I were talking about here in Georgia this summer, that plays a big factor when it comes to workforces, where we've got to keep worker safety as job number one. In fact, as this article points out, Amazon is adjusting routes to give drivers more breaks to cool down. And it spent almost $60 million in 2023. That's pocket change for them, to better insulate vans. I love those initiatives there. But as we all know, Marty, I'm going to get your take here. As we all know, there's no such thing as free shipping, as the costs truly, truly abound. Marty, that's a lot there, but this article really had my mind in overdrive. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think before COVID, we all just pretended that supply chains happened magically and we always got our stuff when we wanted it. And we're seeing you mentioned the Canadian rail strike, weather, there are just so many things. But what I love about the article is our ability to adapt, taking big data, providing for our workers, providing great leadership. So it's scary, but we are showing that, hey, we have the tools, we know the things to do to adapt, and consumers will adapt as well. If you don't get your stuff in 2 days, if you have to wait 4, you adapt. So I'm scared by it, but I'm also cautiously optimistic about what we're doing about it.
I'm with you. I think it's fascinating. We have long spoken here for years now. I've been a big proponent of, just because we can get it same day, next day, 2 day, do we really need it? And where that consumer convenience in a growing way conflicts with all the demands for more sustainability, something in my view has to give. And to Marty's point, I would just echo the challenge. If you don't need those red wool socks in 2 days and you can afford to wait for a couple of weeks at least, hey, that's a choice you can make, right? We all play an active part in global supply chain. But folks, let us know your take. We dropped a link to this intriguing article from CNBC right there in the comments, and we'd love to hear your thoughts here. Jeremy says, hey, love the insight into the freight landscape of supply chain. Not always the most up-to-date, in tune. I think he's saying he isn't with the logistics market, as he's in manufacturing. Jeremy, love manufacturing, and he is tuned in from the great Midwest, home of lots and lots of manufacturing. Jeremy, I love it. Love the industry. Appreciate you being here. And we welcome your continued thoughts on these topics here today. Marty, you spent a good bit of time in your career in the manufacturing sector as well, right?
Absolutely. That's vast majority of where I've been. And it's, it's a wonderful but difficult challenge in manufacturing.
It is. But you know what? I think we've talked about this. I'm not sure if it was the last time you joined us or maybe a sidebar conversation. The closest environment that I've found to that mission and esprit de corps that I experienced in the Air Force was certainly in entrepreneurial initiatives like we've got now, right? Best team in the world. But in manufacturing, where you got people come together for that one cause of getting good products out on time, taking care of the customer. That's some of the best camaraderie. Lots of pressure and sometimes some pain, to your point, Marty. But what a fascinating industry that creates so much really wealth across the world, opportunities across the world. All right. So let's see here. We just wrapped this article here, CNBC. So y'all check it out. Let us know what you think. Now I got to go back 2. Amanda chimed in. So folks, I was talking about August and everything after and where that reference may have come from. Folks, is Counting Crows that released that same self-titled album. I think it was 93, Marty. Was that part of your collection that you had, Marty?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. That came out either my junior or senior at high school, and me and my friends wore that thing out from start to finish. I could just about sing every song, but I'm not going to hurt your eardrums here today on The Buzz. But Amanda, thanks for coming in on my musical references there. Okay, so Marty Parker, we have got an outstanding guest. We're bringing in here today, a dear, great friend of the show. She is one of the longtime hosts of Logistics with Purpose podcast. Find it wherever you get yours. Great stuff. She takes action as she's one of the founders of an action-driven initiative working to provide humanitarian aid to people in need in Ukraine and the greater region. She is a marketing dynamo, avid world traveler. Let's welcome in Kristi Porter, Chief Marketing Officer with Vector Global Logistics. Hey, Kristi, how you doing?
Hi, so good to be here.
Great to have you back. Marty, we've been looking forward to this, haven't we?
Absolutely. Really excited to hear what Kristi's going to help us learn about.
I'm with you. But this is where we're going to start this learning process, Marty and Kristi. I mentioned I'm gonna do another throwback. If y'all remember, if you're remember the Fraggles back in the 80s, right? HBO, famous puppet show. It's been cartoons and movies ever since. Well, there was a character, I can't remember this character's name, but he was always traveling around the world and sending postcards back to the Fraggles. And Kristi, not calling you a Fraggle, but I tell you what, you have been world traveling like no other here this year. And I want to ask you, you spent time at the Olympics, which has got to be what an incredible lifetime experience. What was one of the coolest aspects to being at the Olympics in France this year?
So first of all, yes. So down at Fraggle Rock, and I actually I have 3 friends that I'm gonna have to go back and look at that because I didn't remember that part of the show. But
yeah,
so I send 3 postcards from everywhere I go as well.
Really?
One to my mom that she keeps in little collection books because she's not a traveler, so she just does it all through me. I have one that just years ago, a friend and I started trading postcards when we would travel places. So I still send one to his family anywhere I go. And then one of my friends has a kindergartner. And so to teach them about geography, they ask friends and family to send them postcards so they can talk about it. And it's kind of an interesting way to discuss geography. So he also has the best postcard collection in his class as well.
I love that. Marty, I tell you, I was just thinking as we were getting ready for the show over the weekend about postcards. I think I watched there was a Charlie Trotter special on Netflix. He's a big chef, and he was famous throughout his career of sending postcards as well. And I was thinking, like, do people still send postcards? And Marty, we've got our answer. Kristi pays it forward and sends plenty. I thought it's a pretty cool idea, Marty, huh?
No, it's impressive for a chief marketing officer in this day and age of all the digital stuff to do something awesome and old school like postcards. I love it.
It's fun. It's awesome having the digital photos, but yeah. Although I will say, maybe it's because it is kind of a lost art. My iPhone 14 takes a lot better pictures than a lot of some of the postcards I buy. So if you're one who markets and manufactures postcards, give me a call and talk. But yes, Olympics was a bucket list trip.
Okay, so what was between just the sheer spectacle, the competition, the incredible stories of the athletes that fight to get there and compete, the food, the sights? What was one of your favorite parts?
Yeah, so actually a friend and I had submitted volunteer applications about 18 months or 20 months at this point to be in Paris for the Olympics as volunteers, where I am not a sports person at all. But for 2 weeks, every 2 years, I am all in on whatever is playing. And so we had requested, but so had 400,000 other people. So we did not get chosen, unfortunately. But I was like, I still want to be there because I feel like, well, it's Paris and it's the Olympics. But at the same time, Paris, as we saw, did things so differently by incorporating the cities into everything. And so hopefully that will be kind of a rejuvenation for the Olympics as well. But it was totally just a feat from start to finish. It was, we ended up staying at this hotel that was kind of out of the way, but on the same floor as us was part of the Hungary team. So we got kind of the inside scoop. You would meet people on the streets. It was kind of like, walking around LA and you're like, is that person famous? Is that person famous? Well, this was like, is that person an Olympian? Are they an Olympian? And so it was really fun. And we had lots of stories, but it was, congrats to Paris. I think they did a pretty remarkable job, especially kind of doing it in an unprecedented way. Also, they were very diligent. There was really nowhere you could go without a security presence.
Okay.
I don't know where all those people came from, but there was no shortage of feeling safe because there was always somebody around. And then the 45,000 volunteers that did get chosen were so helpful, so nice. After being there and it being such a hot year, I was like, perhaps it was best I didn't get chosen this year because I don't do so well with the heat. So I might have just been like, I don't know, find it yourself. I'm hot. But it was pretty remarkable. And I think probably my favorite experience was being at the Eiffel Tower Stadium for the semifinals of beach volleyball.
Oh man, I'm so jealous. Marty, all of that. And by the way, the Olympics should consider themselves invigorated for sure. I think there's more interest in Olympics than I can remember, at least since the 96, which, we were a bit partial there. But Marty, out of all that picture of the experience that Kristi kind of painted, what was your favorite part about the Olympics?
So one is surprising and one is not. We watched the 10,000 meter. I think an American came in third for the first time in a gazillion years.
Yep.
And just the battling, the length of time in that race, it was just, is somebody going to fall? I think the guy that came in third place almost fell. So that was amazing, but it's got to be breakdancing. I mean, no doubt. Got all the memes. My little brother did breakdancing back in the 80s in malls, and I think he would have won. I'm just going to be honest, because breakdancing in the 80s, breakdancing today just appear to be two different things from what I saw on TV. So those are my two favorites.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm with you.
Speaking of marathon, they had one of the awesome things that I don't know if people realized was one night we were just kind of walking the streets trying to find where the cauldron was, because it would lift up in the air every night. And so we were looking for that, and we're like, we're over by the Louvre. And we're like, these streets are blocked off. What's going on? And people were just kind of everywhere bunched up. And we're like, are they all looking for the cauldron? What's happening? And so one of the wonderful, beautiful things that Paris did this year was after the official Olympic marathon was over, they had kind of a marathon for you. And so anybody at all who wanted to run that course through the streets of Paris was able to do that. And so we just happened to be walking in the area they were doing that. And so, we stopped and cheered on people, and there were people piled up, as if they were all awesome on the side of the road cheering for them. And then they all got medals. So the next day you saw people wearing their marathon for you medals, and it was pretty awesome.
Oh, that is awesome. All right. We're going to have to get you to come back and give a full analysis of your Olympics experience. The trip of a lifetime, it sounds. So great to have you here, Kristi. Hey, really quick, AWAB. Hey, interested. He is in the role of technology, especially AI, and solving and forecasting future challenges. Stay tuned. We may not get all that today, but that's a big part of what we talk about here all the time. So great to have you. Larry Klein, LK from South Georgia, as always, great to have you here. And hey, one of our regular pop-in practitioners, Adrian Betts. Great to see you. Buenos dias from the ATL. Great to see you, Adrian. Okay, so Kristi and Marty, we got to get to work. I want to start for context, Kristi. A lot of our listeners are familiar with Vector Global Logistics. We've done a lot of collaboration over the years. I really appreciate what your team does. But just for context for the new folks, in a nutshell, what does your company do?
Sure. So essentially, we move things from A to B. So around the world globally. So Vector Global Logistics, luckily we have an easy name for you to figure out rather than a lot of intuition needed there. So we ship things. One of the interesting and different things about Vector is not only how we work for your results. So clients don't care what our office hours are, they care where their stuff is. And so we're available all the time to meet them and help make them successful. And then we also, for every shipment, we have a charity tie-in. And so we'll talk a little bit more about Logistics with Purpose as a podcast, but that is also one of our values. And so charitable giving is tied to every shipment as well. But our team loves logistics and loves giving back.
Oh, I'm with you. And they're moving mountains. And, Marty, first time I ever met Enrique Alvarez, one of Kristi's colleagues there at Vector. About the third sentence into our conversation, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "I'm out to change the world." And everybody snickers when you hear something like that. But to Kristi's point, when not only you're handling the business, but you're giving forward and truly changing people's lives. We're going to talk about a big initiative here in a second. That's the kind of company I think everybody would like to work for. Marty, your thoughts there?
No, a lot of people forget that supply chain is a helping profession. They think that they have to go do something else. But, when you understand the full context, you understand what a difference supply chain makes in people's lives.
That's right. Well said. Purpose is going to be, I guess, a big theme of today's episode of The Buzz. Speaking of purpose, excellent segue here, Kristi. We've been honored as y'all have been leading from creating this leveraging logistics for Ukraine initiative, outcomes focused initiative. We've been honored to follow y'all's lead and help support however we can. I've been a part of some of those conversations, and it's, man, you get a bunch of passionate people around the table that just want to find ways of helping others. It is invigorating. If you would, Kristi, tell us what the initiative does, and then some of the latest outcomes that's been produced.
Yeah, of course. As we know, and as thank you, Marty, early on for referencing our latest video, but logistics at its core is about moving the world forward. And so it's a great place to start when you want to think about helping people. As far as Ukraine, our position is not only that it is a moral obligation, but also that it is a war of supply chain. Ukraine produces a lot of wheat, and that region, I think, is called the world's breadbasket. 40% of wheat production comes from there. They are obviously attacking infrastructure, energy, all of those things. So there's a lot of supply chain component to it. And so shortly after the war broke out, as you know, we started having regular, at that point, it was weekly conversations to bring any stakeholder who wanted to be involved. So that's everything from nonprofits to logistics companies to competitors to friends to peers to interested parties. Anybody could participate in those discussions. And now we hold them every 2 months, but that has been a continuous part of the journey over the last couple of years. So still having those conversations, and still, of course, everybody has seen, even though it's a busy news cycle all the time.
Right.
Still in the news. They're on the offense now instead of just defense. And so we are still working in there. There's a lot of people that need help. So we've been shipping aid and still cultivating those conversations. And so to this point, we have shipped over 1.15 million pounds of aid to the region, and then made dozens of conversations, and then holding those leveraging logistics for Ukraine conversations. And it was encouraging to me because I know in speaking to people who either their organization was created as a result of the war, or who had already been speaking or working in that region, it's a very important and personal issue to them. And so when I was recently in Munich and Paris, it was really encouraging to see the Ukraine flag flying in places that were highly representative of that, the Liberation Museum in Paris and one of the big squares in Munich. And so sometimes I think they feel like people have forgotten because aid has slacked off, which we've seen as well. But there's still a lot happening, a lot of going. And it was really encouraging to see the Ukraine flag flying, and also to see their team walking in the closing ceremonies at the Olympics. And I can't imagine being an Olympian anyway, but especially one coming from a country like that and what they must have to do to even just accomplish any goals.
Kristi, I'm with you. And really quick, I want you mentioned the Ukrainian flag a few times. Folks, this is what you're going to find. We dropped a link to where you can learn more about leveraging logistics for Ukraine. Also sign up for, I think, the next conversations in October, I believe, as they continue to work on increasing that 1.15 million pounds of aid. And oftentimes, Kristi, from what I've seen, that's been targeted aid where they've really vetted the request, and then you source so it's really helps people even more because we're not just shipping stuff to get it shipped. Love that element of it. And folks, on this site, you'll also find vetted nonprofits that have joined in. You'll see lists of what is really needed. So maybe if you want to kind of target your efforts to help, but y'all check that out. Marty,
thank you.
This conversation, this initiative deserves, I wish we had a whole month of programming to set aside and dedicate to it. Your thoughts on this action-oriented initiative that Kristi and the team are leading?
So first, Kristi, I'm glad you're traveling at your age. I did it at your age a lot. And I went to Haiti 4 times and Guatemala 3 times. And, Haiti's in perpetual sort of civil war, and Guatemala deals with severe drug wars, and nothing compared to Ukraine, where you're constantly from external bombardment. And, your bridges are damaged, your roads are damaged, your infrastructure is damaged, you're blockaded. And so anything that any of us can do to help, like I saw in both Haiti and Guatemala, is important. And we need to step up and do that, because, the logistics and supply chain just does not work well in a situation like that. It can't.
That's right. Well said. And folks, again, the link is right there in the comments. And I would echo Majdi, I believe. I've got your name wrong. My apologies. My Southern English does not help me. But as he says, great work, Kristi. Your team is doing really wonderful work. I completely echo that. And as the one and only Koze says, Vector Global Logistics leading the way. Deeds speak loudest. Korai. Well said, my friend. Kristi, we talk about purpose. We talk about what you get up out of bed to do every morning. We talk about finding fulfillment in what you do. I bet you and your team talk about this big do-good component of y'all's culture all the time, huh?
We do. It is a common conversation at Logistics to talk about purpose. So, of course, we work with nonprofit and humanitarian aid organizations as clients or as charity partners, things like that. But it is just our teams, take on volunteer projects. It is really happening at every level of our company. And so, yeah, we're certainly really proud of that. We also got our, as you know, our B Corp and Sistema Bay certifications.
That's right.
A few months back to demonstrate that we were also verified by a third party backing up the claims of environmental and social impact. And so we're pretty proud of that as well.
I would be too. Hey, one more thing before we leave this topic. Some of the conversations I've been a part of, thanks to Kristi and the team, Bakhmut Brad, I think I said that right?
Yeah.
Who was embedded. He was a dedicated in-country, just finding ways to help. He was in danger all the time. Kristi and the Logistics with Purpose podcast interviewed him. He's been interviewed by all the other big medias as well. And it's fascinating to see folks rise to the cause, right? And focus on helping. All the other Ukrainian entrepreneurs y'all have joined forces with, Kristi. It has been, it really is, it is heartwarming, not in a cliche way, but in a very real, powerful way. So folks, learn more, be a part. You don't have to come and contribute right away. If you want to come to these conversations and take it all in and observe, they welcome that, right? No obligations, but check out this incredible action and outcome-oriented initiative. Okay, let's talk about logistics. I can't say that today. That's not good. That's not good, Marty and Kristi, for given what I do. Logistics with Purpose podcast, one of our longest-running podcasts, is part of the Supply Chain Now family. Love the work y'all do. So as you crank those out, Kristi, you and your team of co-hosts, what's been one of your favorite recent episodes?
Well, thank you. I love talking about the podcast as well. We also, as you're aware, hit 100 episodes back in March, and you were a guest on that special episode as well. So we appreciate all the support and help we get from the Supply Chain Now team to it. But those are the kind of stories that definitely keep us going and keep us engaged and remind us there's always a lot of bad news in supply chain. And so Logistics with Purpose gives us the ability to talk about the good things that are happening. And I think, given the world of supply chain as well, kind of the other thing we continually forget, or perhaps the wider public does not know, is how creative and innovative people are in logistics. Just our team's ability to get things from one place to another, and as well as the Logistics with Purpose nonprofits and for-profits that we interview, and how they do such big work with such a small team. And so kind of pointing to that and partnering with Ukraine and just everything that's happening in the world. Our latest episode is with Better Shelter and Johan Carlson. And so that was a really fascinating conversation. And I originally saw an article about their work with the IKEA Foundation a while back. And so that was how I became aware of them and started checking them out. And we're like, oh, we need to talk to these people. They're doing amazing work. And so they do create shelters for refugee camps, disaster relief. So while that is not new, the way they do it is very different. It's a very innovative spirit that they have. One of the things I was most impressed with, and if you listen to the interview with Johan, you'll see this as well. But whenever he was talking about building these and how they piloted and built their shelters, he kept saying dignity, dignity. And I was like, okay, well, shelter in what you do, emergency shelter, whether it's natural or man-made or whatever, is an urgent need. So what do you mean by dignity? And he was like, well, our shelters have windows. They have the ability to customize. You can add on to them. You can hang things in them. And so he's like, people are often living in refugee camps or in war-torn areas for years at a time. And so one of the reasons they created their company is because a canvas tent has to be replaced every few months, and especially in certain conditions for weather and things. And so they wanted something more sturdy, more durable, that acted like a mini house, that could be constructed extremely quickly, but would still give people some dignity. And he said, and it lasts a few years, unlike a canvas tent. And so the ability, he was like, they have windows. We have, we're working on getting more photos and video of how they've customized and hang family photos. And, and he was like, the other thing with a tent is obviously the walls are very thin. The walls are very thin. And so he's like, this gives them more, not only shelter from the storm, but it also enables them to have more privacy and, not have to worry about that factor. And he's like, so because sometimes these are long-term housing solutions for people, unfortunately, we wanted them to feel more at home here and not just serve a quick purpose that is certainly needed and certainly has its place. And he's like, but if they're going to be here for a while, we want them to feel at home there and give them that dignity.
Oh, man. So folks, check out that full conversation. I bet, Kristi, you're getting just a tip of the iceberg of the full conversation. Better shelter. And I love the focus on dignity, right? And that quality of life that everyone really deserves. And if we can, find a way to provide some sort of comfort, some sort of dignity, some form of, that quality of life to folks in war zones, goodness gracious, that is certainly a noble mission. Marty, your thoughts on that conversation with the folks from Better Shelter?
Yeah, so I think this idea of purpose is mission critical. We're going to talk about recruiting and retaining students as an example, but most companies don't really think of it that way. I used to make paint and used to talk about making paint, and then I began talking about making the world beautiful. Instead, I worked with a swimming pool supply of parts. No, you help families have fun together in their leisure time. I mean, so I love what Kristi's doing and articulating it in a way that matters. Yes. And people want to work at places, they want to help places that matter.
Well said. I can't wait to talk more about that when it comes to the supply chain talent war that's been going on, but I can't agree with you anymore, Marty. Kristi, love what you are doing, whether it's related to Vector in terms of the business itself, whether it's related to leveraging logistics for Ukraine, which again, we dropped the link there. Folks, check this out. There's so many different ways you can get involved with that initiative. And of course, Logistics with Purpose, which we dropped a link to that episode and the library of 100+ episodes. You can also find that wherever you get your podcasts as well. Kristi, there's so much more we need to talk about with you, but for the moment, let's make sure folks know how to connect with you, and then we'll have you back again really soon. How can folks track you down, Kristi?
Yeah, so first of all, I'll leave a little teaser. Our impact report for 2023 will be dropping in the next week or so. So stay tuned for that to read more in depth about some of the projects and people that we've been working with. And then as far as I'm on LinkedIn, so social media in general, but I'm on LinkedIn. If you're interested in seeing travel pictures, then you can follow me on Instagram. But more business-oriented conversations, then of course you can find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Kristi Porter with Vector Global Logistics. Thanks so much for being here today, Kristi.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. Talk soon.
Thank you so much.
Oh, Marty, I tell you what, it is really a joy to collaborate with folks like Kristi and their team. Folks, make sure you connect with Kristi on LinkedIn. As she mentioned, we dropped a link right there. And stay tuned for the impact report. One thing I like about that, Marty, is if you're going to talk about it, make it important, you got to measure your progress. And that's what Vector and the team do. Okay, so Marty, we got a lot to get to here today.
Absolutely.
Half, right? Let's see here. Where are we starting? Oh, we're starting with this. Look at this. Check out this graphic here. And folks, if you are listening, I'll just describe it. It's Benjamin Franklin looking at scrutinizing a calculator. It looks, making sure the numbers are getting calculated right. Folks, this comes to us from the Wall Street Journal as we get into a few manufacturing and economic signals. Now, while many business leaders are welcoming the talk of interest rate cuts in the U.S. as early as September, man, how about that? Some economic analysts, though, are worried about a potential recession that may follow. In fact, famed economist David Rosenberg warns that the declining job market in the U.S. points to a probable recession in the near future. And I think Mr. Rosenberg is one of the few that correctly predicted the Great Recession back in 2008. Anyway, nevertheless, the S&P Global Flash U.S. Composite PMI, as a mouthful, all that measures manufacturing and services sectors, right? That showed a slight slowdown in August from July numbers for the U.S. in those areas, but still growth overall. Now, back to Marty, what you said earlier, sometimes the data does contradict. And in this case, that data contradicts other data that we've been covering, which has showed continued manufacturing sluggishness in particular in the U.S. Now, speaking of manufacturing, the sector continues to see challenges and lack of activity in the home of the Olympics, France and Germany. But Europe's economy has showed an expected shot in the arm, as you might imagine, with the Olympics. The question is, though, Marty, just how long will that halo effect last, right? The United Kingdom, which made an interest rate cut in early August, well, they've been showing economic output rising at its fastest pace since April. Other good news, and there's always something to go looking for it, economic data also shows positive economic signs in Australia, Japan, and India. The last, India, of course, where they're making big strides to grow the manufacturing base. So, Marty, all of that, a mix of good and bad news. Your thoughts on where we're going?
Well, if I knew, I'd go out and put a lot of money on what was going to happen.
Right.
The bottom line is, a lot of the indicators are slowing, but are still growing. And so, we'll get more information depending on what the Fed does in September. It's really hard to say. And, industries are growing, industries are declining. Some areas are up, some areas are down. I think too, as humans, we always think about the worst thing that can happen. It's kind of a evolutionary part of our brains. And so I'm more optimistic, frankly, probably than most people. And it seems like we've been talking about a recession for a while. So I'm still optimistic, especially with growth that we're seeing around the world. The U.S. has been leading it for a year and a half, and now maybe we're not leading it, but we sure do ship a lot of things and receive a lot of things from those countries. So right. I'm going to remain cautiously optimistic.
Hey, I'm with you. I like your position, respect that position. I would also add to it that we're going to be getting a lot more certainty in the weeks, in the next couple of months. And with that, good or bad, comes the ability to make more decisions for business leaders and professionals, households, you name it. So I am also cautiously optimistic, and we hope, there's a lot of smarter folks than me that can weigh in on the impact of interest rate cuts, both in the good and some of the negative repercussions. So we'll see. But certainty, which is inarguable, good things come with that. Big Show Bob Bova. Marty, I'm not sure if old Bob Bova has been a part of any of your previous shows here, but he says there's still so much room for global companies to improve through adoption of new technologies. Nothing seems to be stopping this trend. That's an excellent point. I would just add to that, Marty, if you have a comment, please share. the trough the trough of disillusionment that AI may be experiencing a little bit of. That's to be expected. I think it'll find its second gear because of the sheer impact it will have, especially as leaders, organizational leaders, get better at determining where and in a very targeted manner where they can apply it in their organization, right? Leadership has some lessons learned there as well. Marty, anything to add to that discussion or Bob's point?
No, and a lot of those technologies are right here in the good old USA. We're developing them. We're developing the services around them, the software that brings them here, the data centers that store them. So, I remain cautiously optimistic, but that is a fantastic point. That a lot of those new things, and we saw it in the 2-day article, right? The 2-day article talked about a lot of applications of those tools to make things better. So
That's right.
I think those are all opportunities.
Speaking of opportunities, one thing you touched on, we need to open the Scott and Marty server farm somewhere in Georgia, because talk about an industry that is blowing up. Marty, we'll have to talk about it after today's show. Okay. All right, Adrian, it's a good point. Adrian strikes me as someone that maybe has studied economics somewhere. Adrian says some part of the economy needs major help about every 36 months. I think you are right. Gino Pledger, great to see you, Gino, from North Alabama. Food equipment manufacturing, Gino says, showing signs of starting up. Projects have been stopped for a year and a half, roughly. Excellent points. And Gino would know. He's done a lot of work in that sector. Great to see you, Gino. All right. So, folks, but whatever you do, hey, don't let Benjamin Franklin down. He looks pretty ticked about something. But check out the article. We always drop the link so y'all can check it out and let us know your take. Don't just listen to us. All right. From here, Marty, I wanted to make a quick plug, because one of the ways that we can better navigate the current, any environment for that matter, is optimizing procurement operations and results. And we've got an outstanding event coming up on September 10th, where we're going to be discussing proven ways to do just that by leveraging group purchasing organizations. Now, folks, before you roll your eyes, I know some of y'all out there will, oh gosh, a GPO. Folks, this is not, or I should say this right. It ain't your grandmama's GPO, okay? There's some very innovative organizations out there like Omnia Partners that's changing the game on a variety of levels. So join us on the 10th of September, right around the corner at 12 noon Eastern time, as me and the one and only Corinne Bursa. We're going to dive in with a couple of home run panelists to learn a lot more. And folks, this is a live session, so bring your questions, even your challenging questions, bring them all. And we're going to be dropping a link to this event coming up soon. Hey, Marty Parker, procurement is cool again. Have you heard this yet? Have you been seeing this?
So I see companies that procure things the same way they did 30 years ago. And the technology and the approaches and the data and the relationships that you can have with vendors and suppliers to improve, together is huge. And yes. So I think that sounds like a great webinar.
Man, I'm with you. So folks, we dropped a link there in the chat. And Marty, that's a great point, because there's pockets of any functional area that probably cling to how we've done things for 30 and 40 and 50 years. But I do love I'll call it airtime, for lack of a better phrase, that the procurement world has been getting in recent years. I love it. Let's see, going back to, we were talking a minute ago about the evolution of technology. Bob had one other great comment here. Just to add, he says, incremental improvements are also very opportunistic for company executives. The bigger plays, AI, robots, will take years to implement properly, but it will happen. That's a great point. It's kind of like the old GE approach, right? Just give me 1 or 2% every single year, back when GE was that global behemoth that it was. All right, so let's see here. Where are we going next? We've got another. This is interesting. We've been kind of building to this read right here. And this comes to us from our friends at Supply and Demand Chain Executive. It's about the battle for supply chain talent and how some companies are finding ways to win more and more. So I'm going to lay out 4 of these best practices, and I can't wait to get Marty to weigh in, because not only is Marty still doing big things in the industry, but he's doing big things with the now generation, So he's in the catbird seat. So y'all stay tuned. Let me unpack this first, though. So the 4 things that they suggest: partner. Number 1 is partner with technical institutions. Now, folks, did you know the number of students earning a technical or 2-year degree in the field of supply chain? Well, that's more than doubled in the last 7 years. That's great news. We need to quadruple it, but I'll take doubling it for now. So partner with technical institutions. Communicate ESG values. That came up a lot in the first part of today's show. For example, from what I've seen, Marty, there's been a ton of real purposeful interest in renewable energy and how to better leverage that out in supply chain roles, from my recent conversations at least. So the second one, communicate those ESG values. Thirdly, focus on pay, rewards, and benefits. Some would argue and do so in a transparent manner. The article featured one supply chain tech company that was introducing basically like pay transparency across this organization. I think that's an interesting initiative. And then fourthly, spotlight career development. Folks, when anyone joins your organization, they don't want to be in that same role doing the same thing without any development for 20 years. They want to know, especially the now generation, as we call them, folks in and recently graduated, they want to see how their career can develop and evolve. But that's just my take. Marty, your thoughts here?
Yeah, there's a lot there, Scott. I work at the University of Georgia, and we have more jobs than we do students. So I'm not surprised by the 2-year programs taking off. Students want jobs that matter. They want long-term careers. I get people my age asking, well, what are the students like? And I can tell you they're remarkable. Many of them have already started businesses, have 1, 2, 3 internships under their belts. I've implemented ERPs, believe it or not, with students. I've implemented e-com with students. What they can do is just beyond remarkable. And the last thing you want to do is hire them. And I tell them this: you hire them to make your company better, make changes, make improvements, grow sales, save costs. And the first thing they run into are the bureaucratic barriers of your company to keep them from doing that.
Yep.
So they need leadership on your part to help them make the kind of change that needs to happen. And then they need to have some idea of where their career is going to go over the next 3, 5, 10 years. Because if you don't, they'll get snatched up just like that. I see it all the time in my LinkedIn. So great stuff in there. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, Scott, and have a lot of passion because I do, as you know, 300 one-on-one 20-minute career appointments with them. So I know what they want, I know where they're going, and I know what you need to hire them and to keep them.
Man, okay. So Marty, I was going to ask at the end, but I want to go ahead and throw this out there because you've got a wealth of expertise. You got your finger on the pulse, and you welcome conversations from our audience. I bet that that can learn from you. So how, really quick before we go on, how can folks connect with you, Marty, if they're interested in kind of what you're seeing there?
Yeah, I'm easy. I'm Marty. You can Google Marty Parker, UGA, Marty Parker, LinkedIn, and find me on LinkedIn. I also can find me at my company, Adapt Advising, ADAEPT advising.com.
Wonderful. And we're gonna touch on one of the cool things, the content you put out across social in just a minute. Let's see here. Gino saying amen. Hallelujah. Preach it louder is what he's saying to Pastor Marty here. I'm with you, Gino. I'm with you. And also, hey, Mom, Leah Luton checking in from Aiken, South Kakalaki. Hey, you can always be late. You've earned that privilege there, Leah Luton. All right, so let's see here. There's one thing I was going to mention. Oh yeah. Before we get into the last topic today, really quick, Marty, is it just when I evaluate the current students, and not just at one school, but all these interviews we do as part of our Now Generation series, the folks, just the can do, what they're already doing. It's not even just the potential, it's what they're already doing. It seems so different than when I was in college. And I don't know if that was because I was a slacker and there's plenty of folks out there and it was just me, but would you argue that the current student ecosystem is just that much more capable? I mean, how would you couch that, Marty?
So it's a complicated question, but we didn't have Google, we didn't have AI, we didn't have a lot of the tools. So there were tremendous inefficiencies. I had pieces of green engineering paper and a pencil. So I really do believe that today's student, with those additional advantages, honestly, that they've got, and the newer technologies that they're learning, just come in and just knock the ball out of the park. And so, I knew great people 100 years ago when I was there. I know great students now. I just think they really have access to amazing technologies that really make them more efficient at what they do.
Yeah, well said, Marty. Well said. All right, folks, we dropped the link to connect with Marty on LinkedIn or follow him. You'll be glad that you did. And really, that's a great segue as we get into this last thing. Now, I had to get a snippet of this video that you shared the other day. And I loved how you are repping, Marty, our Atlanta Braves, the 2021 World Series champs, the 1995 World Series champs. Oh, and the Falcons today. Okay. Well, folks, and Marty, I love your coaching and advising content and leadership content and more that you regularly publish across social, especially on LinkedIn, where I happen to consume most of it. In a recent one, which is the one I've picked here, you spoke about the power of effective listening. Now, folks, I can tell you from personal experience that a whole bunch more people need to pay attention to your advice and proven tips here. But I'll just, folks, and we're also dropping a link so you can check out the full 2 or 3 minute video and other things that he includes in that. But as we wrap here today, when it comes to supply chain pros out there, or really anyone across global business that really is looking to improve their listening, what simple advice would you offer, Marty?
So I meant to mention, find me at Supply Chain Dog, DAWG. That's where you can find all the videos, either on Reels or X or TikTok, because they're a little harder to find on LinkedIn.
Yes, that's right.
So I learned listening from my wife, Beth, and she would ask the question, "Are you listening to me?" And I talk about it in the video. And if I'm not listening, big trouble. If I am listening, I better know what the heck she was talking about. And I run into so many leaders that are thinking about what they want to tell somebody first. They're distracted by their phones. They're distracted by the emergency of the day. And so, whether you use breathing techniques or things that ground you, you need to be in the zone with people when they come to see you, and you need to be available to help them. I talk about the reverse org chart. Our job as C-suite executives is to serve the people that work for us, who serve the people that work for the customer directly. And so listening is really the thing that enables that. And, there are ways you can be proactive by asking good questions. My friend Carl Libba at Curiosity Coach advocates that. And so listening can really, really change. And it's not something I've done well, by the way, over the years. It's something that I've had to learn. And leaders can learn that. And it'll make all the difference to your employees.
Well said. And, I would, on that last point you made about, you weren't great at it. You're like all of us humans, that the 99.9%, all of us stink at listening. Every so often I'll come across folks at all points in journeys that just are wonderful listeners. They're active listeners. And I tell you, they stick out. You know them when you run into them. But anyone can listen better, to your point, if we really want to and apply ourselves. So, folks, if you like real practical conversations and advice and tips like this from somewhere that's been there and done it, make sure you connect or follow Marty Parker wherever you get your social content from. And I like what Bob says here. Always understand before being understood, and don't be afraid to listen to the line. Excellent point, Bob. Excellent point. Okay, so What a great show here today. Excellent show. Marty, I've really enjoyed your perspective throughout. I love what Kristi and the Vector team are doing, folks. Make sure you connect with those initiatives. We get, if you can't connect directly on the link, by the way, you may have to copy and paste it. It kind of depends on your tech platform you're tuned into. Some automatically make them clickable, if that makes sense. Others, you got to copy and paste. But let us know. You can find just about everything we've shared here today somewhere on our website or across our social. Marty Parker, always a pleasure to connect with you on The Buzz. Thanks so much for being here.
Glad to be here, Scott. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Folks, also, if you want to learn more about anything we do here across the Supply Chain Now ecosystem, check out this other link we're going to be dropping, or this graphic here, which this link will take you to. You can check out our newsletters, our podcasts, you name it. Information is power, especially the right information. So with all of that said, I want to thank, of course, Marty and Kristi. I want to thank Amanda and Catherine behind the scenes. Most importantly, I want to thank all of y'all that have chosen to invest about 62 minutes with us from your Monday this week on The Buzz, whether you're listening to the live version or you're listening to the replay, which we drop on Fridays. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for all the perspective. On behalf of the entire team here at Supply Chain Now, though, I got to challenge you. Do good. Give forward. Be the change that's needed. And we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.